back. CNN political commentator and activist Sally Kohn tackles the history of hate by interviewing some pretty unlikely people, including a former neo-Nazi, a former terrorist, and even some of her most vitriolic social media trolls. She shares these interviews and much more in a book called The Opposite of Hate, a field guide to repairing our humanity, which needs some repairing. So please welcome Sally Kohn. It's good to have you here. Thank you. I've watched you for such a long time. What was the catalyst that made you want to research this particular topic?
Well, you know, I've been interested in the topic of hate as someone who spent my career working for justice and equality, and is aware that, you know, it seems pretty bad right now. We have a pretty deep history of hate in our country. We're a nation that, in spite of our aspirations and our rhetoric, was in so many ways founded on hate. That still leaves its imprint in our institutions and our policies. Well, I mean, come on, we're a country that, you know, our nation wiped out Native American populations to establish itself. Country literally built on slavery, that has at every point in history fought tooth and nail to deny rights and basic equality to group after group after group. So this is an ongoing problem.
And still love our country. In fact, I think loving the country means we want to make improvements for the things that are faulty.
I think about loving the idea of America, right? And what we I think have always and the ideals and what we've always said we represent, even though we haven't always achieved it perfectly. And look, it's not denying that history. I think we do too much to not want to confront or talk about the reality of racism and misogyny and, you know, Islamophobia. And these are real. With this book, what I hoped was we could stop arguing about whether this is real or not, stop arguing about whether we have institutional bias and unconscious bias, and start figuring out the solution, start working together to solve it.
I'm ready for that. You interviewed a lot of experts, but you also interviewed just some regular people, and I was amazed. You did something I don't think very many people do with their trolls, and if you don't know, trolls are people who just rampage over social media, I think particularly on Twitter, but other places as well.
Particularly on Twitter.
Who just, you know, lavish all kinds of negative attention on women in particular. And you engaged with some of these people to find out more about them. What did you discover?
I should clarify. You said it is true there's data that women get trolled worse, but as do people of color and gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender folks.
And if you add all those things together, then you really get it.
That is that unfortunately, you know, the same discrimination patterns we see offline are also worse online. You know, maybe I shouldn't have been surprised, I guess, but what ended up surprising me was that these are regular people. I mean, it's an interesting word, troll, right? Trolls are not people. They're creatures that live under bridge and throw rocks or whatever. And these are regular people who, you know, had complex feelings, had pain and suffering and hopes and dreams and humor and darkness, and were as complex as any of the rest of us. And it reminded me, first of all, I learned two things. One was they thought why would I even notice and we're talking people who, like, sometimes trolled me once a day, thought, oh, I didn't think anyone saw those. I didn't think anyone was reading those. And it's not because they don't understand how Twitter works and that those tweets are public, but to me it spoke to this larger sense of, you know, here I am, I have a voice, I have a platform, people pay attention to what I say, and these folks are emblematic of so many of us, I think, or so many others who feel like they don't matter, they don't have a voice, no one's paying attention to what they think or say or their pain. And I took that away. I also realized, here I thought they were being so hateful, and it was obvious, and I thought, oh, well, when I ask them, they'll think they're hateful, right? And they didn't think they were hateful. The truth is, most of us don't think we're hateful, most of us don't mean to be hateful, and most of us think someone else started it. In their case, they thought I was the one who was hateful.
So let's talk about this very important idea that you write about in the book, is that when somebody's being hateful towards you, you assume they're a hateful person. And when you're doing something that could be construed as really bad behavior or hateful, you think it's because that other person caused you to behave that way. And what is that called? So
at an individual level, it's called the fundamental attribution error. In general, we have this thing we do, and it's about hate, but we do it about, you know, I make a mistake, and I say, oh, well, it was just a mistake, and it was situational, it was the circumstances, I can explain why it happened, but someone else does it. And they're, you know, that's who they are.
They're a screw up.
Right, so I say something mean, oh, it was because I was provoked or I was this or that, but someone else does it, they're a mean person. It's about their essence, it's about who they are. And we actually then, that's the fundamental attribution error. We do it on a group level, which is called the ultimate attribution error. So for instance, someone on our political party or side says something we find offensive, and we say, oh, but it was context, or oh, it was justified, or we make excuses for it. The other side does it, and we say, well, they're just fundamentally mean. They're fundamentally hateful. That's who they are as a side.
And everybody's nodding because we all know that we do it and that human beings do it. But knowing it the way you explained it was an aha moment for me to say, okay, I recognize that. Now, how do I put that into my filter as I'm going through my life? I thought that was just such an important point and gave us a focus for self-examination. So thank you for that. So we can't go through everybody that you talked to. We only have about a minute left. But what did you learn, for example, from the terrorist that you interviewed?
So, and I want to be careful, terrorist is not a word I would use, it's a word he uses himself. Right. This is a man who when he was a teenager, is Palestinian and was involved in an act throwing grenades at an Israeli military convoy. Technically, under international law, not terrorism, but he calls himself ex-terrorist, and he was convicted of terrorism. And he wanted, by his own account, he wanted to, you know, kill and harm Israelis. And when he went to prison, you know, and to him, Israelis were Jews, Jews were Israelis, because the only Israelis or Jews he'd ever met were the soldiers who occupied his home and threatened his community. And when he went to prison, he saw a film on the Holocaust, something that he hadn't known the truth about, and it ripped him open. It ripped him open. He went, after prison, he got a degree in Holocaust studies. He went on to start an organization called Combatants for Peace, where former Israeli soldiers and former Palestinian combatants work together for common ground and common understanding. And it's a reminder that even in dynamics like that, that we consider unresolvable, where the hate on both sides is so entrenched, so deep, so long-standing, that people can change, that people can see, not stop believing what they believe, not stop defending their rights and their differences. He does that still, but but also see the humanity, see and find compassion for the other side. It's pretty powerful. If he can do it, I think there's hope for us.
That's what I want to hear. There's hope for us, and there's a lot in this book to learn from. Thank you. Sally says there's hope. Sally will discuss and sign copies of The Opposite of Hate tonight at 7:30 at University Lutheran Church in Seattle. The event is hosted by Town Hall Seattle, but I thoroughly recommend this book, and we'll be right back. Thank you so much. Thank you.